All right, welcome everybody around the world. Welcome to all my subscribers. So today I have an assortment of verses here that are very important because they prove something that's critical at this time in human history. As I've shown in my other videos for about 6 years now on YouTube through my different channels, I've shown that 2023 is the end days. There's very few people on this planet who even believe such. There's only a handful of websites, only a handful of books that have existed in all these recent years, ever really. But it's critical that everybody understands this, even more so because now we're actually in the year 2023. It's upon us. So at any point during this year, and even at the end of this year, or in the start of 2024, it could happen. Now, I'm not here to go through proof for the year in this video. What I'm here to do in this video is read an assortment of verses that will leave you absolutely shaking my hand in agreement, because they're undeniable once you hear all these verses. A lot of these verses, most of them, are ones that the average person, a Christian, has not read or has breezed over or not paid attention to, because quite simply, I'm going to read them. And once you hear them for yourself, you would shake my hand and say, yes, you are correct. Okay, so, and judge for yourself when I read them. But, excuse me, these verses will show you that God, believe it or not, because, the average Christian today will tell you nobody can know when God and Jesus returns. And people who try to claim it are false prophets. This is what everybody says. Everybody. But I will show you with the verses here today that that is wrong. And the sad reality is that people who think like that and who aren't ready and aren't watching and knowing when it will happen, they could very well be left behind. And that's not my own invention. The verses I'm going to read pretty much basically say that. The verses I'm about to read will show you that God is actually expecting us, pretty much on the verge of commanding us, okay, to know the number, the length of time, the number of years, to know when it's going to be. It's quite clear to know when it will happen, to know the year, not the month, not the week, not the day, not the hour, just the year. God has made this clear. And all these verses will show you that having this knowledge of when it will happen is what makes you ready and waiting and able to watch for his imminent and sudden arrival. And in all these verses, you'll see the contrast shows that those who are not ready and watching, because everybody can wait. Anybody can wait. You could wait for something even if you don't know when it's going to happen. Waiting is still part of it, right? It's not like you can be watching and not waiting. However, anybody could wait. And you could say, oh, I'm watching. But 2,000 years has transpired since Jesus. How long were you watching for? You know what I mean? If you know when it's going to happen, which God clearly told us to know, then you can watch, because you will know the year that it will happen in. You can be ready. But those who won't be, it calls them as being asleep, even drunken in a stupor. Okay, and these people will not see the Lord, well, not literally, but they won't see the Lord coming. They'll be caught by surprise. Okay, and if you ask any Christian today, any church, they would teach you, oh, this guy here, me on YouTube, he's a false prophet, because the Bible, and they'll pull out 3 or 4 verses and read them out of context and everything. And they'll say, oh, nobody can know when Jesus returns. But I'm telling you now, they're all liars. They're wolves in sheep's clothing. And unfortunately, the vast majority of Christianity has fallen victim to this, right? And the average Christian, even if they're not a preacher or out on the street or out on YouTube or on the internet or in school or wherever it is they might be, and they're rebuking people, the average Christian, they're rebuking people who are trying to say that we can know. So don't be left behind. That's all I can say. And these things, these concepts are not my invention, is what these verses say. So to start off, I have to start off here. This is in the prophecy of Daniel. Okay? If you want to see proof for 2023, I have 7 pillars of scriptural proof. I made videos recently about this. Go check it out. I'm not here to talk about proof for the year. Okay? I'm not here to talk about that. If we go to Daniel, though, this is one of the pillars, and it's one of the places in the Bible where God reveals that 2023 is the end. Okay, so I'm not going to fuss about proving the year. Please understand that. Okay, I'm here to talk about something else. But in Daniel chapter 12, he says in verse 12, "Oh, the blessedness of him who is waiting earnestly, and has come to the days 1,335, which is 2023, okay? And thou go on to the end, then thou dost rest, and dost stand in thy lot at the end of the days." So whether you believe that 2023 is the end or not, like maybe you haven't seen all my evidence, all my discoveries, it doesn't matter when it is. I'm here today to talk about the basic concept. Can you know when it's going to happen? Yes, you can, and you should know, and God is expecting us to know. It is required to know, and if you don't know, you could be left behind. That's what I'm here stressing. Who cares when it's going to happen? I just want to make that clear. That's the point I'm trying to make here today with this video. Okay, so we look in Daniel here. Let's not fuss about the numbers. That's my point. Let's keep it simple for this video. We look in Daniel. Okay, it says, "From God, oh, the blessedness of him who is waiting earnestly and does come to the days 1335. And thou go on to the end, and thou dost rest, and dost stand in thy lot at the end of days." Okay, what God has said here, amidst all those fancy words, is the following concept. If you're a student and you go up to your teacher and you ask the teacher, "Teacher, when is the end of the semester final exam?" Okay, you don't know when the end of the semester will be, the end of time or the end of days. And you don't know when the judgment day, i.e., the final exam, will be. But you want to ask your teacher, "Teacher, when will the big exam at the end of semester be?" That's what you ask him. When's it going to be? And then the teacher, if he responds to you, "Oh, well, it'll be real," like, imagine the teacher saying this to you, because it's exactly what happened there in Daniel chapter 12. What God says is basically exactly this. The teacher would respond to you, "Well, student, you would do really well to wait patiently for, let's just say, 30 days. Okay? If you wait patiently those 30 days, then you'll be there at your lot at the end of the semester when the big final exam will happen." Okay, so you as a student ask the teacher says, "Yeah, just wait 30 days." And if you do wait the 30 days, so you know when it's going to happen, because it's going to be at the end of the 30 days, right? So he's telling you when it's going to happen, and if you wait for it, you're blessed. God's not commanding it in this instance, but it's more like rubbing it in your face, like, "Hey, this is when the end is going to be. And by the way, blessed are you if you wait those days." How do you wait 30 days? If Amazon tells you, "Oh, you must wait 30 days for your package to be delivered," and you have to wait 30 days, you follow me? You're waiting 30 days because you know when it's going to come. It's going to come at the end of 30 days. So nobody, no Christian, I don't care who you are, nobody can say, because you've got 3 or 4 verses you can pull out of context, out of the rabbit hat, and I know which ones they are, okay? Nobody could say that you can't know when it's going to happen, because God literally just said it here in Daniel chapter 12. The blessedness of him. Oh, the blessedness of the student who's waiting earnestly and does come to the days of 1335. Then thou go on to the end. Then thou does rest from your semester and does stand in thy lot at the final exam. Okay? There you go. Translated. Okay? Into another form for easier understanding. So for anybody to say, "Oh, no, you can't know," then you're calling God a liar. Why will God tell you, "Hey, wait 30 days for your package to be delivered. Hey, wait 30 days for the final exam. Hey, wait 30 days for the judgment day"? Why would he tell you this if you can't know when it's going to happen? Right? That's the first problem. That's how you can separate the sheep from the wolves. Anybody telling you can't know, they're a wolf. They're going to use the 3 or 4 verses that exist in the New Testament out of context to say you can't know when he's coming. But all of those verses only say you can't know the day or hour. But I will show you this assortment of verses here today that show you that, no, you must know. Jesus and God say so. And if you don't know, you might be left behind, bro. Okay? So let's begin. If we start off here in Mark 13, okay, verse 33, it says, "Take heed, watch, and pray." Now, watch is important because It's not just a random word. It's a word that God and Jesus used repeatedly in the Bible, especially in the New Testament, to stress. And again, I've said before, if you're at the airport and your friend calls you and says, hey, buddy, I'm going to fly in on this flight. And you say, oh, okay, well, I don't know when that flight comes in. Well, I want you to pick me up. How are you going to know when this is going to happen? Unless the guy tells you, oh, hey, buddy, yeah, I'm coming in 1,335 minutes or at 13:35 on the 24-hour clock. You know what I mean? When your buddy tells you that, then you can be at the airport and watch. Oh, okay, I see his plane coming in. You can watch for that. You can watch for him coming out from the baggage claim area because you know when he was coming. But if you don't know when he's coming, you can't watch for him unless you're like some type of rock and you sit on a mountain watching the sky for 2,000 years after Jesus' death. That's my point. The very fact that they use these terms, watch, so many times in this exact context, okay, that I'm talking about here, proves that we are to watch. And you can only watch if you know. And God told us that we should know, and blessed art thou who do know and wait the prescribed time period to arrive at the prescribed year of the judgment day. Okay, year of the judgment. So in Mark, he says, take heed, watch and pray, for ye have not known when the time is. As a man who has gone abroad, having left his house, and given to his servants the authority, and to each one his work, did command also the porter, those are the ones who I think watch the door and stuff, he did command also the porter that he may watch. Watch ye. So that's 3 times he says watch. Watch ye therefore, for ye have not known when the Lord of the house does come. Now, even if we know the year, a year's a long time. You also can't sit outside on your porch watching literally for a year. But the point of all of this is, and through all the verses, it's made abundantly clear, and there's no fogginess or vagueness, right? Why am I getting 6 million messages on my phone? Like, good Lord, that was like 6 in a row. That threw me right off track. So anyways, watch therefore, for you've not known when. My point is a year is a long time. You can't literally watch even when you know the year. But if you know the year, you're not going to be caught by surprise. Because all these verses, they warn us that if you're not watching, if you don't know when it's going to happen, you will be caught by surprise. But if you do know and you are watching, then you won't be caught by surprise. The logic is all laid out for you there. It's plain as day. So he says, watch ye therefore, for ye have not known when the Lord of the house does come. I said all that because this statement, this verse here, doesn't disprove what I'm saying, right? I'm showing it in a reasonable, raw, open, honest perspective, right? Watch ye therefore, for ye have not known when the Lord of the house does come, at evening or at midnight or at cock crowing or at the morning, because he won't know the day or the hour. But listen in the next verse. So he says watch 3 times. And he says, lest having come suddenly, and we know Jesus will arrive like lightning, right? So lest having come suddenly, he may find you sleeping. Now, they're not talking about sleeping in bed. There's many verses where it talks about this element, and it's a metaphorical use. And through all the verses that use these terms, watching and sleeping, you can clearly see, and it's not my own understanding, it's laid out in the Bible, that if you know when it's going to happen and you're watching for it, that flight arrival, you're awake. And if you don't, then you're considered asleep. That's the context that's laid out in the verses quite clearly, right? So he says 3 times to watch. Watch for what? The arrival of the flight. How can you watch for a plane arriving at the airport? Or how can you watch for your friend to come out of the airport terminal so you can pick them up if you don't know when it's going to happen, right? But if you watch and you know when, you're not going to be caught by surprise, right? So that's why the verses say, watch ye therefore, for ye have not known when the Lord of the house does come, at evening or at midnight or at cock crowing or at the morning, lest having come suddenly, he may find you sleeping. And what I say to you, I say to all, watch. So that's 4 uses of the term watch there. But that's just the first verse. Let's go into the next one. Mark 14. This is the very next chapter. It's the long story that I've talked about in 3 videos over the last few days. I don't want to keep repeating it, so I'm just going to read it from memory. Just say it from memory. Jesus was with his disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he wanted to go and make a prayer. He said, wait here and watch. Okay? I'm going to go away and make a prayer. He went away and made a very important prayer that I've talked about so many times, I don't want to keep repeating. But he went away and made that very important prayer, which is actually related to the 2023 pillars of scriptural proof. But anyways, he went out and made a prayer. He came back and they had fallen asleep. That was the first watch. They fell asleep. Then he went out again. He said, watch this time. I'm going back out to do the same thing. He came back that second time. They had fallen asleep again. So they failed for 2 watches. So he had to go out a third time. When he came back from the third time, it doesn't say whether they had fallen asleep again, but he rebukes them in general. Okay? Whereas for the first 2 watches, it does verbally specify that they fell asleep, and he rebuked them for being actively asleep at his return there. Okay? And I've said a million times before that this story is a poetic, obvious hint from God as to, well, from Jesus, well, both. Jesus is saying to his disciples, I'm with you now, but I'm going to go away from you for a time. You won't necessarily know how long. Wait for me to return. Okay? That's the story being relayed there. On the first watch, they had fallen asleep. Well, how does that reflect in Jesus' life? Well, he died. He had told his disciples, hey, I'm going to die. I'm going to depart from you for a while, but then you will see me again. Okay? And when he were in the Gethsemane parallel, that's the first watch. He went away, came back, but they were all asleep. So when he resurrected and returned in his, paradisal body after the resurrection, that was like that in parallel. The second time, the second watch in parallel is obvious. It's when Jesus departed from the earth and he told everybody then, hey, I'm going to be gone, for a long time, and I'm going to come back at the end of days, right? So when Jesus when he went away to pray the second time and he came back, that's what that is in parallel. So the disciples should have been waiting for his return and watching, like he told them to do, watching for his return. Okay? But instead of watching, they fell asleep. So like I said, all of these verses will show you the contrast. Those who are watching are awake. Those who are not watching for the arrival of the flight at the airport are considered as asleep. Those who are asleep are left behind. Those who are awake and watching to immediately let him in will be taken. This is what the verses say. Okay? So I'll just read an excerpt from Mark 14, and it's paralleled in all the Gospels. So in verse 37, and he cometh and findeth them sleeping. And he said to Peter, Simon, thou dost sleep, you are unable to watch 1 hour? Watch ye and pray that ye may not enter into temptation. So if you're not watching for Jesus' return, he equates it to this slumber and temptation, all these dark things, right? Why would he make this contrast? Because obviously to God, to not know when it's going to happen and not be ready and watching for his imminent arrival, that's a grievous sin. Why would it be a grievous sin? Well, it could be because in Daniel 12, he told us when it would happen and said, oh, the blessedness of him who is waiting earnestly and does come to that time at the end of days. So anyways, continuing with the verses, he said, you are unable to watch 1 hour. He says, watch ye and pray that ye may not enter into temptation, the temptation to fall asleep into this blindness. The spirit is indeed forward, but the flesh weak. And having gone away, he prayed the same word saying. And having returned, he found them again sleeping, for their eyes were heavy, and they had not known what they might answer him. And he cometh the third time, and he saith to them, sleep on henceforth, and rest. It is over, the hour did come. The Son of Man is delivered up to the hands of sinners. So let's move on to the next verse. It's just going to get better and better with each verse that I go to. So next we have in Romans 11, verse 7. What then? What Israel does seek after, this it did not obtain. And the chosen, who are the chosen, by the way? Think about that in light of all these things. It says, and the chosen did obtain, and the rest were hardened. So who are the rest? Right? One would think, it's Israel and the Gentiles, Jew and Gentile. But here we have 3 categories. We have Israel sought after this, but it didn't obtain it. And then it says the chosen did obtain it, but the rest were hardened. And it says, according as it has been written, God gave to them a spirit of deep sleep. This is a reference to the rest of them. So we have the chosen and then the rest of them who are hardened. And they define what is that hardness, and it's a spirit of deep sleep. We just heard Jesus, and you're going to hear many more verses regarding Jesus equate to not watching for his imminent arrival as being in a deep sleep. Okay, so it says here that the chosen did obtain what? The knowledge of when it would happen and the wisdom to watch for it. Okay, those who didn't were hardened, they were in a deep sleep. It says, and they were given eyes not to see and ears not to hear. So if you're not watching for the arrival, you're in a spirit of deep sleep with eyes that do not see and eyes that do not hear. Okay, so that's very, very interesting. And just scripturally, that proves that it equates deep sleep to being blind and deaf, okay, and hardened. So being asleep is being equated to being blind, deaf, and hardened, okay? So let's move on. In 1 Thessalonians 5, it says, and concerning the times and seasons, brethren, ye have no need of my writing to you, for yourselves have known thoroughly that the day of the Lord, as a thief in the night, does so come. For when they may say peace and charity, then sudden destruction. Remember that word sudden, because we already read it in one of the verses. We know Jesus comes like lightning. And there's another verse I'm going to read where it says you have to be ready watching for it to immediately let him in, right? If you're blind, deaf, hardened, and asleep, you're not going to know when it's going to happen. So how are you going to let him in? When he immediately comes knocking, right? So you'll see this all fit together, right? But bear with me. So for you have known that the day of the Lord as a thief in the night does so come. And remember that term, thief in the night. That's important too, because God says and Jesus says he only comes like a thief in the night to those who aren't watching. It says that. So if you're not watching, you're asleep. It's to those who are asleep he comes like a thief in the night. And why? Because he catches them by surprise. Why? Because they didn't know when it would happen. They weren't ready, waiting, and watching, like God instructed us to do. Okay? So anyways, for yourselves have known thoroughly that the day of the Lord as a thief in the night does so come. For when they may say peace and charity, then sudden destruction does stand by them, as the travail does for her who is with child, and they shall not escape. And ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that the day may catch you as a thief. So as I've said a million times before, here we have Paul, I think it is, stressing that, oh, no. He's putting a difference between the two categories. He's not saying that nobody will know when he comes. He'll catch us all by surprise. He's saying, no. The good guys will not be surprised or caught unawares. Those in the bad side will be asleep, stumbling, mumbling, bumbling, and they won't know what's going on. Okay? So he says, and ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that the day of the arrival may catch you as a thief. So you got all the churches out there saying, oh, he comes like a thief. He'll catch us all by surprise. They haven't even read 2 verses later where it says, you are not in darkness, that the day may catch you as a thief. So as true Christians, we shouldn't be caught by surprise. And you wouldn't be caught by surprise if you know when your friend's flight comes in. You follow me? So he says, all of you are sons of light and sons of day. We are not of night nor of darkness. So then we may not sleep as also the others, but watch and be sober. What others, right? That would be where it said here, where the chosen did obtain and the rest were hardened. The rest who are hardened have been given a spirit of deep sleep and blind eyes and deaf ears unto this very day, it says, right? So that's what sleep is in this context, right? It's talking about the day of the arrival, and even mentioned times and seasons, right? It's talking about the time of the arrival, and he says, nope, we, the chosen, we're awake. We're ready, waiting, watching. We're not going to fall asleep, be deaf and blind. You know what I mean? So he says, you're sons of light and sons of day. We are not of night nor of darkness. So then we may not sleep as also the others, those rest of them who got hardened, but watch and be sober. We've heard the word watch thrown around probably about a dozen times already in just 3 verses, right? But watch and be sober. For those sleeping by night do sleep. There comes the darkness. And those making themselves drunk by night are drunken. So if you're asleep, if you're not ready, waiting, and watching for his arrival, you don't know when it's going to happen, you're clueless, you don't care, or you've been deceived by the wolves and you think you can't know when it comes because you haven't bothered to read Daniel and the rest of the Bible, you just think it's impossible. You're drunk, asleep in darkness and all that. That's what is clearly laid out throughout all these verses. I'm only about halfway through my verses. So for those sleeping by night do sleep, and those making themselves drunk by night are drunken. We, being of the day, let us be sober, putting on a breastplate of faith and love and helmet So there he goes. He shows this stark contrast between those who are watching and awake and those who are asleep and not watching. Okay, this has been repeated in all these verses so far. Next, we're going to go to Luke 12. It says, same scenario, same context. And be like to men waiting for their Lord, when he shall return out of the wedding feast, that he, having come and knocked, which will be suddenly, which we've heard twice already. And we know he comes like lightning. That's the third word. We know he comes suddenly, right? When he shall return out of the wedding feast, that he, having come and knocked, immediately they may open to him. If Jesus comes suddenly like lightning, how can you immediately open up to him? If you have no clue when it's going to happen, it could happen in 100 years for all you know. But if you know, no, it's going to happen in 2023, at the end of 2023, if you know the year, whatever the year might be, I'm just saying, we're not fussing over numbers here in this video, right? You get my point. Even if your friend says, well, I don't know exactly what time my flight will arrive. I may not know what day my flight will arrive, oh friend, but I know that my flight will arrive, and you could still, at this general time frame, you can still go to the airport and wait for them. You just want to know the day or the hour. There's a lot of people on planet Earth today that have waited and slept at airports over 24 hours waiting for their loved one to arrive. This is the same category. Okay? So, and if he may come, where is it? So be like to men waiting for the Lord, when he shall return out of the wedding feast, that he, having come and knocked, immediately they may open to him. So if you know, okay, my friend, my beloved is going to arrive at the airport, but I don't know if he's coming today or tomorrow, right? I don't know what day, I don't know what hour, but I know generally when he's going to come. I love him so much, I'm going to go to that airport, I'm going to watch out the window, and I don't know what flight he's coming in on. I don't know what time he's coming in on. I don't even know the airline he's coming in on, but I know that my beloved friend is coming. He told me that he would come. He told me, the number of days that it would be. So I know it's either going to be today or tomorrow, that type of thing. I'm going to go there and patiently wait for him and watch. Okay. And none of these contexts about being asleep being bad, that's not saying that natural slumber is bad. It's not a sin to go to sleep. God designed the body to need sleep. That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about things on a higher level. Okay. The obvious, and it's obvious, right? None of this is contrived, right? So Jesus has come immediately, they may open to him. Then it says, happy those servants whom the Lord, having come, shall find watching. Okay, so it's not my invention. How many times we need to hear it? Blessed is he who waits and counts the days for the end to arrive. Okay, all the other verses that I've just read. And then here we have, happy those servants whom the Lord, having come, shall find watching. So when that airplane comes in and our beloved comes in, he sees a bunch of people standing by the window watching patiently. Okay, in effect, these are the ones he's talking about. Happy those servants whom the Lord, having come, shall find watching. Verily I say to you that he will gird himself and cause them to recline and meet, having come near, will minister to them. And if he may come in the second watch, and this is a direct tie over to that gospel story from Gethsemane that I said earlier. If he may come in the second watch, and in the third watch he may come, he may find it so. Happy are those servants. But we know from the story of Gethsemane, in those 3 watches, when Jesus went out those 3 times, the people failed in the first 2. We don't know the outcome of the third. It doesn't specify. We know that they were asleep. And I think that sets a precedent and warns us that mankind in general will be asleep, even the Christians, when he does arrive. Most of the people will be asleep. But anyways, if he may come in the second watch, and it says if he may come in the second watch, and in the third watch he may come and may find it so, meaning people awake, happy are those servants, those who are awake and watching. In this know that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief does come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house be broken through. And ye then become ye ready, because at the hour ye think not the Son of Man does come. And Peter said to him, Sir, unto us this simile dost thou speak, or unto us all? And the Lord said, Who then is the faithful and prudent steward, whom the Lord shall set over his household, and give in season the wheat measure? Happy that servant, whom his Lord, having come, shall find doing so. Truly I say to you that over all his goods he will set him. Now listen to this, verse 45. And if that servant may say in his heart, My Lord does delay to come. This is, could be representative of all those people and Christians who think, oh, we don't know when Jesus is coming. It says, because it's giving a contrast. like, day and night, a direct opposite contrast here. This is one. It says, my Lord does delay to come, maybe begin to beat the men servants, essentially sin, and the maidservants eat and drink and be drunken. It says, the Lord of that servant, that one who thinks the Lord is delaying, the Lord of that servant will come in a day which he does not look for him. So the people who won't know the day or the hour are those sinners who are asleep and drunken in unawares, right? So the Lord of that servant will come in a day he does not look for him, and in an hour that he does not know. It doesn't say that for everybody. It says for the sinner who is asleep in slumber and sin, right? The Lord of that servant will come in a day he won't look for him, and in an hour he does not know, and will cut him off. Cut him off. Like I said, if you don't know these things, you might be left behind. He says he will cut him off, and his portion with the unfaithful he will appoint. And that servant who, having known his Lord's will, and having not prepared, nor having gone according to his will, shall be beaten with many stripes. So that's pretty impressive. Then if we go to Revelation 3, verse 3, he says, as an edict, as a warning to the end days churches, he says, remember then how thou hast received and heard, and be keeping and reform. If then thou mayest not watch. So we heard all those instructions to watch, and now we hear, if you don't watch, what will happen? So Jesus says, if you don't watch, I will come upon you as a thief. And you got all those wolves, all those false, the ones who really are false teachers, because they call me false prophet. They're all the false prophets out there, wolves in sheep's clothing, saying you can't know when he's coming. There's no way you can know. They're just the slumberers. They're going to be caught by surprise, right? Jesus says, if you don't watch, I will come upon you as a thief, and thou mayest not know what hour I will come upon thee, right? So this is quite striking. Now, next, if we go to Luke, verse 21, it's all about the arrival of the end days. There'll be signs in the sun, moon, and stars, right? And then they'll see the Son of Man coming in a cloud. So it's all about the arrival of Jesus. And then, where is it? So it goes through all this stuff. And in verse 33, the heaven and the earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. And then in verse 35 and 36, for as a snare, it shall come on all those dwelling on the face of all the land. That's suddenness that we heard before, right? For as a snare it shall come on all those dwelling on the face of all the land. Watch ye, it says in verse 36, in every season, praying that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that are about to come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. So that's another command to watch. In each of these chapters and verses I'm reading from, the direct context is the arrival of the end days in Jesus, right? And all the ones that I read, besides the Gethsemane, right? So there's no contrived method here. This is quite obvious. Those who are watching when he arrives, when he comes to the airport, those who are watching are awake. If you're not watching, you're asleep. If you're asleep like that, you're going to be appointed with the unfaithful and cut off. This is what we've gotten so far. Okay? What did Jesus say in Revelation 3? If you don't watch, I will catch you by surprise like a thief. And then you won't know what hour I come upon thee. Just like it said in Luke 12. If you're not watching, you won't know the day or the hour or anything. You'll be clueless to when he's coming. Okay? Then in Luke 21, did I just read that one? Yeah. So finally, in these ones, just very quickly, in 1 Thessalonians 1:10, and to wait for his Son from the heavens. So these are just some quick, loose verses. They're just supplemental because, like I said, anybody can wait. But to watch, you have to know generally when something is going to happen, because you cannot just watch indefinitely for 2,000 years. Okay, but anybody can just wait in general. However, waiting is required when you're watching. So it's still fair to read these verses, right? But once you read them all, it still gives you and lends toward the understanding that you should know when it's going to happen. It says, and to wait for his Son from the heavens. Okay? In Titus 2:13, waiting for the blessed hope and manifestation of the glory of our great God and Savior Jesus Christ. Uses the same terms about waiting and blessed that Daniel 12 did when he told us about wait for this time period for the end of days. Blessed is he who waits. And here we have waiting for the blessed hope and manifestation of the arrival. Exact same thing. Okay? In Hebrews 9:28, to those waiting for him, shall appear to those waiting for him to salvation. Another example. 2 Peter 3:12, waiting for and hasting to the presence of the day of God, by which the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved. 2 Peter 3:13, and for new heavens and new earth, according to his promise, we do wait. Jude 1:21, you could throw in, yourselves in the love of God, keep ye waiting for the kindness of our Lord Jesus Christ, the life age during. So basically, what I've shown with all these verses is there's more than just a precedent. Is pretty strongly laid down there that you have to watch. Okay? God told us the numbers. And the easiest way to sum it up is that if you're a student and you ask the teacher, hey, when is the end of the school year? Or hey, when is the final exam? And if your teacher says, hey, it'll be really good for you to wait 35 days, and then you'll come to your lot at the end of semester, or come to your lot at the final exam. That's what happened in Daniel 12. So God told us 2,500 years ago in the book of Daniel when it would happen. In the 7 pillars of scriptural proof that I found and I cover in my videos, which is all copyright, the material and everything, I have it in books and everything. Okay, but all of that proof shows that 2023 is the year. Okay, and to wrap this video up, this is the year. It could happen at the end of the year, but not either case. God has told us when it's going to happen. We need to watch and be ready. Okay, we have to watch and be ready. And things, I've always said for the last 6 years on all my channels, it could be a year off. Always there should be a natural tolerance for a year of flux. Because when you're dealing with the ancient numbers, you don't know if something happened on a January or a December or in the middle of a year. It's very easy for a half year or a year to come in or out, especially when you're dealing with thousands of year periods. Okay? And it's not through any personal errors being made. It's just how things are. Natural year, and if you've worked with numbers, then you know what I'm talking about. Okay, a year flux could be in 2024. And I've said that since day one. This is not a new invention of mine. Okay? We have to be ready and watching. And if we won't, we could be cut off. Okay, Jesus says in many places that he's going to come suddenly. You don't want to be caught asleep. You don't want to be caught naked and unclothed and caught by surprise. How could you not be caught by surprise? Like if you have a visitor coming to your house for Thanksgiving, it's Jesus. Or if you have Jesus coming into the airport, arriving on a flight, in any context you want to show, you have a friend who is arriving. Okay, how are you going to watch, wait for their arrival without knowing when it's going to happen? Even if you don't necessarily know the day or the hour, but arguably by the verses I've shown, we actually might even be able to know the day and the hour. But let's not go there for this video. I'm only claiming to know the year within a year of flux. That's what I've always ever claimed. Okay, 2023 must be it. But anyways, folks, we got to watch. We got to be ready. If we don't, we could be cut off. You know, I'm not saying if you're a good person and you deserve salvation, that if you weren't watching and ready, that you'll be cut off. I'm not saying that. But the problem is that so many people today are just asleep. They have no clue when it's going to happen. I've been saying it for 6 years. I've reached 250,000 people with all of my videos over these 6 years. But still, there's 8 billion people in the world. So the vast majority of Christians, there's 2.5 billion Christians, they're all just asleep. They don't know when it's going to happen because they have this dogma drilled into their head that you cannot know when it's going to happen. And that came from Satan. And it's blinded everybody. And Satan has blinded them to not read the Bible. I read the Bible tonight. We can see from these verses that we should know when it's going to happen. Blessed is he who is waiting earnestly and does come to that point, which, as shown by all the evidence, is clearly 2023. Okay? So anyways, folks, and no matter when it is, the point for this video is that we can know because God has provided the numbers. Even if you don't want to believe that I have 2023 right, maybe you want to believe it's something else. That's not what we're fussing about here today, is whether you can know these things or not in general. Yes, you can know them. We should know them. We've heard plenty of instruction to know them. What does that tell you before I leave this video? It tells you to get ready. Okay, Jesus said, my flight's coming in. The Bible essentially told us that Jesus's final flight's coming in 2023. And we don't know. It's obviously not been in January now. We know that much, or the first few months. My point is, we don't know whether the start, the middle, the end, just after, a year of flux, reasonable year of flux. some point early in 2024 is my point. But we know and we've been told that it's coming in this period. And out of all the billions of people in this world, who are going to be the most ready? Who are going to be the closest to that airport window, pressing their faces up against the glass? The only ones coming close to doing that are those who know about 2023 and the prophecy of Daniel and the other 7 pillars that I discovered. Okay, the other 6 pillars that I discovered. Right? So that's what you got to do. Don't say God didn't tell you. Don't say I didn't warn you. You've been told now. You've heard it. You're guilty of hearing it. You got to do it. So be ready. Be waiting. Be watching. Don't say I didn't tell you. When all the sky goes red and everything starts going chaotic and all the rocks are falling down to the earth and the earth starts shaking and then it starts going dark, don't say I didn't warn you, because it's going to happen. What did it say? Suddenly. Sudden destruction. Sudden. Okay? Sudden. Don't say I didn't warn you. Okay? But I will tell you what I will be saying at that time. Because when it happens, I'm going to say, well, I told everybody for 6 years, nobody wanted to blink and will listen to me. Right? Just like in Noah's day. Oh, there's a flood coming. Oh, look at you, Noah. Nobody cares. All right. And it's because of all the charlatans that came before. Oh, it's going to be in 1844. Oh, it's going to be in 1983. Oh, it's going to be this. It's going to be that. All those charlatans poisoned the waters and ruined people's trust, unfortunately. But God laid it out. God laid it out there in Daniel 2,500 years ago. Okay, I'm not the only person to realize 2023 from Daniel, but only a few people in the world have. Like I said, there's only a few. So if you go look yourself, very few people have said it in terms of, not mentioning it in a chat forum on a YouTube video, but actually, published something and published and made known their discoveries and given scriptural evidence for it. There's only a few. I know because I've spent 6 years researching it. Okay, there's very few others who have been talking about it. So the world is clearly asleep and slumbering. God told us right there in the Bible. Okay, I don't think people could have figured it out until recently, like I've said before, until at least 1948. Then you could have pieced it together. Arguably, possibly in 688 AD, you could have, with faith, understood the things to have lined up. But still, right? God did technically tell us 2,500 years ago in the book of Daniel. He did. It's not lying or twisting things. God told us 2,500 years ago when it would happen. So we can't say, oh, well, you didn't tell us, or you didn't give us enough time. We had plenty of time. We all have had our whole lifetimes, for everybody in the last 2,500 years, to, like good students, read the one book that God gave us. The one book of all this. You go to school, you have lots of books. God only gave us one. The Bible is probably about as big as your biology textbook. You know what I mean? In school, you carry around lots of books. God only gave you one book. You got your whole lifetime instead of 8 months to study that one book. How many people have done it? If they read it, they would have read Daniel 12. If they cared about the Bible, if they cared about judgment, if they believed, then they would have studied. And if they studied, anybody, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, would have realized the prophecy of Daniel points to 2023. That's why a few other people have realized it. But a few is not enough. And nobody listens to us. That's the problem. Nobody listens to us. There's church organizations out there denouncing us in 2023. Well, we'll see who's right. And I'm advocating for the Bible. This isn't some wacky theory I came up with from a dream or something. 100% Bible. Go check out my 7 pillars videos of proof. Okay, so let's hope and pray, people. Let's hope and pray. I'm going to ask everybody, because a few times I've done this and it came true. I'm going to do it again as a witness here. Let's see what happens. I wasn't planning this. This is how it's good to do it like this. That's what I'm going to say as a hint. Dear Almighty God, this is a spur of the moment, as I think it should be done, through spiritual internal impulse. I beg you, dear Almighty God, for a little sign, because any sign I ask for will be nothing compared to the signs you said you would give. But I beg you to please give us a sign similar to the one you said you would give, a red sky. Please give us a hint of this red sky of what would happen. Please make it be significant enough that it makes the major news in the world. It doesn't have to be in every single nation, but so that I would see it and millions of others, so that it reaches major news, like ABC, NBC, those type of things. Okay? A big portion of the sky being red. It doesn't matter what the cause is. Okay? But not something man-made like a pollutant or a chemical or something like that. Perhaps something stellar or cosmic, maybe some type of aurora type effect or some plasma thing, but that the sky would go red in a fairly large portion of the sky. Please give that to us as a little tiny, gentle sign. It's not going to act as our proof, but just as a little nod. Please, that's all I ask. You don't have to, but that's all I ask. And thank you, Almighty God. Amen. So anyways, I end the video on that note. God bless you all, folks. Take care.